Check, check, 1, 2, 3. Check, check.
We love that. We love to start our mornings off like that, don't we?
You know what's funny is if you don't do that, it is a bitch to try and align the audio.
I do know.
So.
Well, good morning to you, Harry Schuhmacher. Morning. This is the man, the myth, and the legend, Harry Schuhmacher, my boss.
Oh, for crying out loud. Really?
Well, I mean, okay, you have to understand, some of my listeners don't know who you are. So let's take it back 9 years ago on my birthday, March 13th, 9 years ago. I was doing hair. I had finished cosmetology school, was doing hair at the time when I met you. And here we are now, 9 years later, and I'm the president of your company.
Yes.
So...
well done.
Good for her,
Good
right?
for her.
We love that. Okay, so I really want to talk about you today, which I know is one of your favorite subjects.
Well, I mean, I got to say, I don't think you've ever asked about me before.
That's such a lie. That's not true. I do ask, but it's more so I want to know stories.
Right.
And so what I want my listeners, viewers, if I get any, to hear about is how you got started in this business. Because the number one question that I get asked, and this is before you made me president, this is when you hired me for about $5 a year to just like run errands. I mean, so I started at the bottom.
Yes.
And now I'm here.
Now you're here.
Now I'm here. But I really did. And the main question, I remember when I first met you asking, so like it's a magazine. And I remember just the disdain on your face and your eye roll. And you were like, it's not a magazine. Have you heard of Fox News? Have you heard of CNN? That's what we do for the alcohol industry. And I'm like, okay. And then I was like, well, dumb it down a little bit more. So I want to start with how did this come to your mind? You started this company 26 years ago.
Yeah.
So start from where you want to start.
Okay. Well, I was born on a ranch.
No, you weren't.
No, I was, right after college, I went to work for this great company, a beer distributorship in Houston called Houston Distributing. The owner was Joe Huggins. And this guy was legendary. He's like a John Wayne type, very respected in the industry. He was a big drinker.
Love that for him.
Yeah. And I worked for him for 7 or 8 years and kind of started as a merchandiser and a driver. Like, talk about started
at the bottom.
I mean, this is Drake territory. And we worked my way up. And then I decided I wanted to be a writer, as all, 25-year-olds do.
But didn't Joe really push for you to write?
Yeah, he did. So toward the end, he was real political in Austin because the beer industry relies on bills being passed. And so he would send me to Austin to just hang out by the Capitol and take notes, and then I'd fax it to his office at the end of the day.
I love it.
How's the bill doing? Is it out of committee? And then he would fax it to all the other beer distributors in Texas. And that went on for like, when it was in session for 8 months. And he was like, you're really pretty good at this. Better at it than your job at the beer distributorship.
No shade.
No, I lost a van once. I ran a forklift off the rail dock. There were a lot of expenses involved. And so I was like, okay, great. And then I decided I wanted to be a writer. So I quit and I went back to school up in Boston. But keep in mind, I had 2 kids, babies at this point, and I was married. And
lots of moving parts.
Lot of poverty. And then, anyway, long story short, I left school before I completed. And
well, at least you went there.
At least I went there.
At least you got to say you went there.
Yeah. And I moved to Denver to be a consultant in the beer industry for a consulting firm that only serviced beer and soft drinks. And I worked there for, a year and a half, and I really wanted to do something on my own. And it was my old boss, Joe Huggins, the John Wayne. I went and met him for lunch, and, he was probably about 6 Miller Genuine Drafts and 2 Cuba Libras in at this point. He's like, you just ought to start a newsletter,
Wow.
like Beer Marketer's Insight. So there was a newsletter at the time. It came out every 2 weeks. It was mailed.
Right, which is our competitor.
Yeah.
We get along very well, though.
Yeah.
No bad blood. Great guys. Love them.
No, I mean, his father was legendary.
Yeah.
And I looked up
Jerry,
to him.
right?
Jerry Steinman, yeah. And it was right when the internet, it's like 99. And I was like, why would I mail it? I'll just...
Email it.
No. Fax it.
Oh, fax it.
Remember,
okay.
99.
Okay, sorry.
And also, beer wholesalers are a little slow on the pickup on email. I mean, yes, it was email, but most people got it by fax. And it started a daily, and like everybody thought it was a stupid idea. There's not enough news in the beer industry for daily. But I just started it. Got a few wholesalers in Texas on board, and then just kind of grew it from there. And believe it or not, till like 2010, half of our subscribers were still getting it by fax. And I had to put my foot down. It was costing me. It was expensive back. Back then you paid long distance. And it was a pain in the ass. I used WinFax Pro. It would dial each number and fax it from the computer in succession. It took like 4 hours every night.
Oh,
I had to be tied to a phone line. If I traveled, I have to have. Hey, by the way, I need this phone line for 4 hours tonight. Oh, by the way, it's long distance. Sorry, whatever. So it was dial up 56K. You kids don't know what we went through. And
I can't. I don't remember. I remember having a fax machine.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I don't remember.
Yeah.
The rest of that. Okay,
Right.
so how many years then? Because now you have 3 publications. You have Beer Business Daily, Craft Business Daily, and Wine and Spirits Daily, and they all 3 publish daily. I
had to put the name
5 days a week.
I actually had to put the word daily in the names of the newsletters because when I started them, that was unheard of, a daily digital publication. In fact, the only for pay one that I could think of was the Wall Street Journal at the time. And I actually modeled our webpage. It looked exactly like the wallstreetjournal.com. It was just for beer. And so
how many?
Even when I would, I'd see people at conferences, they're like, oh, I want to subscribe. Like, how often does it come out?
And you're like every day.
It's called Beer Business Daily for a reason.
Monday through Friday.
Right. So, and then people would give me their address, and I'm like, no. I need an email.
Okay, or email. Okay, so how many years? I do know when you first started, your mom would sit with you in your garage and help you lick envelopes.
Yes.
And
that was our marketing.
Okay.
So in order to sell a digital publication back then, you had to send mail through the mail.
Yeah.
So every month we'd send out, 300 mailers. We did it ourselves, and then we'd send it out and we'd get back, 10% back in new subscriptions. That's how I lived for 5 years. And what happened was
a wife and 3 kids.
Yeah, it was
rough.
It was a lot of beans and tortillas. But the thing about it is that it worked great. And then I don't know if you guys remember this, but there was what's that anthrax? There was an anthrax scare. I can't remember which year it was, but everybody quit opening their mail because people were sending anthrax through the mail, and it was
screwed you because you were marketing.
Nobody
through mail.
would open mail they didn't
anthrax,
know.
2001,
and that really threw a loop. And so what I decided that I had to do, and keep in mind I was very shy. I didn't know how to speak in public or anything. And I was like, I have to go to these state beer associations and
start talking to these people.
Yeah, and start going to them. And so I sent out one last fax mailer. Hey, I'll come speak for free. And I got one response out of the 50 states.
Who was it?
Washington State. The
furthest state from Texas.
Yeah, from San Antonio. I was like, oh, cool. So, I ran up my credit card, bought a ticket, got my hotel room. It was a terrible speech, I'm sure, but I got like 30 people signed up, which is huge. And so that was the way that for the next 5 years I grew by just traveling around. And, I remember one time I was in Chicago at the Drake Hotel and I couldn't check out because my credit card was declined. And I had to, I literally hung out in the lobby for like 4 hours until I could find a friend that would come pay my hotel bill. It was Liz Lynch. Thank you, Liz, if you're watching this.
Wow.
And good. So it was all moving money around, credit card debts, whatever. And then in 2005, things started happening. That was when it.
That's when it turned around.
Yeah.
For you.
So 6 years after the initial starting of it, it all happened at once.
And what do you think? Do you think attributed to that, or do you think it wasn't just one thing? It was all these things put together.
I'd like to think it was all these things put together, but the truth is that luck happened.
Okay.
People, can I talk to the camera?
Yes.
Never underestimate the value of luck if you're inept and a drunk. So what happened is that Miller Brewing Company, second largest brewery in the country, was bought by South African breweries. And they sent over a South African to run it. And his name was Norman Adamy.
Oh, yeah.
And he came over here. And I don't know if you know many South Africans, but they're a lot like Texans. They're, very down to earth. They're into buffalo and shit, whatever.
Yeah.
He came over. We hit it off. We met in Vegas at the Circle Bar at Caesars by serendipity and ended up drinking 1,000 Miller Lights. He hit it off with me. And then he went back to corporate head. He goes, why aren't we subscribing to this guy?
Oh, wow.
We only have like one subscription. And he ordered 100 subscriptions.
Oh, shit. So that.
All at once. And this is crucial, I started a conference that year. I held it in
the summit
in Richmond, Virginia at the Jefferson Hotel. 80 people showed up. Not a lot. But the reason those 80 did show up is because Norman Adamy was the keynote speaker. So he came and spoke. And guess what that did? When August Busch IV, who was running Anheuser-Busch, the largest brewery, when he saw that Norman spoke at my conference, he's like, why aren't we speaking? Exactly.
Got FOMO.
And so at the next conference, which was in Chicago, so keep in mind, I had it in July in Richmond. It was hot, humid.
9,000 degrees.
The room had no air conditioning. It was terrible. Ugh. The next year I had it in Chicago in January. Equally bad.
Yeah, because it's like -5.
-5, snow, wind. And in fact, so August agreed to speak at that one. And I'm sitting there on stage and he hadn't shown up yet. Like I'm supposed to introduce him in like 15 minutes. And his Learjet's still circling because of the snow, whatever. He showed up like an hour late, but he spoke. And then from there, once, the AB distributors, if they see that August is speaking at my event, then it's okay to subscribe. I think that's the reluctance. Same with Norman. And that's really, in that year, it really, really took off. And I would say the next milestone was 2008 when when Miller and Coors merged.
Yeah.
That got me in good with Pete Coors and their group.
Right.
And then also InBev out of Europe bought Anheuser-Busch.
Right.
And I happened by a fluke knew one of the largest shareholders of InBev. He was a Belgian Viccount. And I met him when I was in college. My dad took me to Europe, and my dad was not a rich. It was just a trip, but he took me around, and I met that Viccount because my dad imported beer in the 80s. So that was fortuitous. He emailed me. He goes, "Are you the same Harry Schuhmacher?"
Yeah.
Is
Henry your
I wish
dad?
I still had our email exchanges because he was such European like royalty, and I'm just a dirty Texan. And our interactions would be like just, what are you doing? Oh, I'm out in my garden pushing the soil on top of my asparagus so they remain white. You don't eat green asparagus, do you, Harry? I'm like, yeah, slumming over here eating green asparagus.
Yeah, and it makes my pee smell real bad, but okay.
It doesn't do that to me. Huh? So.
Okay. But see, like just in hearing this right now, I never knew that story about Henry introducing you to him. But interestingly enough, I've only been in and around this industry for 9 years. And, just to the common person, beer drinker, they don't know the Molson Coors thing. They don't know the InBev AB thing. Like it's so intricate how crazy our 3-tier system works and
Right.
who owns whom and how you can be in this state and you can distribute this brand, but
Right.
another distributor can't in this state next door.
And by the way, raising my hand, that's why I exist. It is so complex and so complicated that it takes, in our case, 3 journalists daily to cover the industry because there's always something happening. Like right now in California. Anyway, yeah, thank God.
It's such an intricate
It's
system.
very regulated.
Yeah,
So
it is highly regulated.
Yeah, because, when they repealed prohibition, not to bore everybody, but the federal government intentionally left it to the states to regulate alcohol. So each state has different laws.
Right.
I mean, Pennsylvania is like another country.
Well, see, and that's where I get confused. So just for listeners that still don't understand quite this business empire that you've built, we have 3 editors. This is not including Harry. We have 3 editors for Beer Business Daily and Craft Business Daily. We have 2 editors for Wine and Spirits Daily. And then Harry can cover over
whoever's
out,
vacation,
paternity, maternity leave.
Yeah.
And I read it. My lovely producer, Sean here, who we've been friends for 20 years. And I hired him a few years ago to start working some of our events for work. And he's like, Millie, like, I don't know what the fuck is going on. And I'm like, hey man, like I'll give you subs to BBD, CBD, WSD, read it every day, whatever. I see him like a few weeks later and I'm like, so like, what'd you think about that story? And he was like, there were so many fucking acronyms in that. He's like, Google doesn't even know what they mean. And I'm like, I've been around 9 years and I learn something new every single day. It is so confusing and complex.
Yeah.
It's a lot.
It's a PhD. I feel like I have a PhD. But what's great about the industry, though, is that until fairly recently, it was still run by families, and in most cases, it still is. Like all distributors are family owned. But if I had to call August Bush, the CEO, I could just call him. Like it was very democratic, if you want to call it that, or I could call Pete Coors on the line. I could call, Norman Adamy, anybody. It's different now, but we still do have access to the CEOs. We just can't just ring them up on a Sunday.
Well, you can.
Yeah, I had to.
If you had to, I will leave his name out. He's a CEO of a very, very large company here. Well, all over the world. Anyway, he was on vacation. And there was something going on, and he picked up the phone. He was on vacation with his wife and his children. He called you, actually. And you're like, holy shit. And I'm like, what happened? Well, we knew it was serious. But then, there's other companies that when they sell and we don't get the press release, you can call their CEO right away, and they always pick up for Harry.
Well,
if I were to call, they'd be like, I don't even know who the fuck you are, and how did you get my phone number? That's how that would roll.
But it is, because like I said, I started out shy, but you got to have a thick skin, because like I tell the editors, if you're not pissing off at least 50% of the industry every day, you're really not doing your job. So I do have enemies. They're legion. And
one of your number one quotes years ago to me was, we're in the business of turning enemies into friends. Right. And I mean, you have stroked out Jen and Jordan and myself multiple times with texts or emails. And we're like, how are we going to do damage control on this? And you know what? In the end, everything works out just fine.
Yeah.
You have taught me that, I'm going through very turbulent times personally. Mm-hmm. And you're like, do you remember XYZ and how much bigger of a deal that was? And look at it now. He's calling me on vacation with his kids. Right. You always say that. You're like, everything in time.
Right.
You got to give time. And,
That's right.
And we're going to smooth it over. And every guy that hated you and mother effed you, now come to your summit and shake your hand and then and hug me and all that.
Yeah.
And there have been times where you've pissed off billionaires, and they look at you and they won't shake your hand, and then they'll see me and they'll hug me and they'll say, and tell Harry he's an asshole.
Yeah, no, that's real irritating. That everybody loves Millicent. That is true. We go in, and more people know you than know me. I mean,
no,
it's true. Like, or at least they come up to you and like you. But yeah,
but I don't write things to piss them off.
Right? Yeah.
If I had the keyboard. Well, I'm illiterate. So if I had the keyboard, I would never piss anybody off. They would just stop subscribing because they'd be like, who is this 5-year-old that has a keyboard that doesn't know how to use punctuation?
You do yourself discredit. You're way more talented than you know. So
thank you. I'm glad this is recording because I'm gonna play this back. We need to turn this into a reel. You do a better job than you know. You do a better job than you know. Okay, I'm just bullshitting. Okay, so back to you. So I thank you for coming on today and telling us some of your story. Your story's much larger than this, but I do want to give a nod to our best friend, Johnny Gillis. He distributed Lone Star here in San Antonio. Harry would not be maybe where you are right now. I would definitely not be where I am right now if it weren't for Johnny. And
no, he was a beer distributor.
Yep,
and that's how I met him here in San Antonio.
Yep,
and we met through something, but we just hit it off immediately. And throughout my career, he's always supported me as a friend, but also as a source, and teaching me stuff. He was my mentor in a lot of ways. And when I moved back to San Antonio to start Beer Business Daily, like I said, I was broke.
And you were like 30, right?
Yeah, I was 30, and he was starting a software company for beer distributors, and he hired me as a consultant.
Yeah.
To help him, and I did help him.
Yeah.
But it allowed me the time to start Beer Business Daily, so that it was bootstrapped, I guess you could say, but he didn't have to do that. And, it was, that's the kind of friend he was.
Johnny was one of the first people I met in your circle. And in the last 9 years, I've met a ton of people, obviously just from conferences. And, you're from here. I'm not from San Antonio. You grew up here. And so you just know a lot of people in general. But Johnny and his wife, Debbie, took me in. And we lost him. It'll be 3 years in June. And a lot of, I have my job and I've done a lot of things in my life because of Johnny and Debbie. And so in starting this pod, I had to make a wall that embraced me and everything I'm about. And I had to have Lone Star on it.
Right.
That
was his major brand that he distributed.
It was his major brand that he distributed. He had Dos Equis, and he had other big ones too. But Johnny loved Lone Star. Mm-hmm. And when he sold GLI November 1st, 2019, we were there, and there were more tears shed. Yeah. He was more upset about, that was his baby. Yeah. He was more upset about selling, but it was just, and thank God he did. COVID hit.
Yeah.
He beyond lucked out on that. COVID hit 4 or 5 months later. Yeah. And that would have been a travesty. But wanted to give Johnny a nod, and let's cheers to Johnny. Cheers. And thank you for coming on an episode of All the Rumors Are True, and hopefully we can get you back here.
I'd love to come back.
Yeah.
It's fun.
Yeah, it was a good time. Thank you.
All right.
All right. See you next time, guys.